Hey everyone, welcome to the Love the Craft Community Podcast Show. On today's episode, I'm sitting with a gentleman who creates and makes a very, very important tool that's on your workbench and in your workshop. It is the most prized possession is your maker's mark. And this gentleman, who I'm going to introduce you to in a second, he just makes world-class maker mark stamps. And I am so honored to be sitting here with him and introduce him to you guys. It is Tim Purdy. Tim, thank you for coming on the show.
Steve, it's a pleasure to have you over here. I hope you're staying warm enough coming from Southern California.
Yeah. It is it's a little cold up here in Boise. Now, you are the owner of Steel Stamps, Inc.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how did you acquire the company? Did you start this company? And how old is this company?
Yes. So this company is at least 40, possibly 50 years old. Not exactly sure on the history. I acquired the company about 10, 11 years ago. History escapes me to the T, but right in that area. So yeah, they had been making steel stamps. They already had a good reputation. They were making a good quality steel stamp. We came in, took us a few years to really learn the business. And then once we learned it, we were able to start improving on processes, improving on efficiency, this sort of thing.
Mm. So what is it that you guys offer? And what is Steel Stamps, Inc.?
Okay. Yeah. So Steel Stamps, we make maker's marks, stamps for leather. Okay. In addition to maker's marks or branding for your leather, we have some stock stamps. You know, sometimes if I think of a design that might look good, like our Mason square has been real popular, for example, or maybe it's a bear paw or something like this. We just try to think of things of interest that you can purchase off the website, or I'll take some to the show. But as far as leather, the mainstay is maker's marks and branding. And then we also make stamps for blacksmiths, knife makers, where we're stamping directly into the steel. And then we'll do stamps for jewelry as well. Okay, Same thing, branding. We have this line of products as well where for people who make hand stamped jewelry, we have thousands of designs, birds, butterflies, geometrics. It goes on, and just amazing to see how creative people can get making earrings or bracelets or whatever. But we'll talk about leather today, I guess.
Yeah. Now, did you have a history in stamp making, or is this just something that you acquired and you were like, I'm gonna learn this new trade?
No history at all. The only history I had was a working class history. I was used to working with my hands and manual physical labor. Went to college and did the corporate gig for quite some time. I think at a certain point, I reached my level of incompetence in the in the corporate world. But for years prior to that, I'd always thought I want to do something on my own. I want to do something on my own. And so we just started looking and spent about a year just evaluating different businesses. I knew I didn't want to take something from ground zero. I didn't really have time for that. So I started looking for businesses that might be of interest. And I looked at, my wife will laugh when, if you knew the whole range of businesses I was considering, I'll spare you that. But this just seemed like an interesting business. It was, they had a good reputation. They were doing well, a bit behind the times on the technology. We've helped out with that part of it. It took a while though, but yeah, that's how we ended up with the business.
Awesome. And now for your maker stamps, do you make them in like a flat stamp where people can put them in a press, or is it only a handle based style maker stamp?
Yeah, great question. We do both, but yeah, we especially bigger stamps, like somebody wants to stamp a 3-inch stamp on a patch for a ball cap, or maybe there's just a really big piece that they need to stamp. It could be 3-4 inches, and we have done bigger. So yeah, you can put them on. We'll put them on a block, maybe an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick, depending, and put them under your press and have fun.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the metal and what kind of metal do you use? And I just want to know more or less, like, is this metal going to rust? Is it going to like the actual like longevity of the materials that you use?
We use tool steel because we can harden it. Okay. On leather, you could never wear this tool out. It would just probably be impossible to wear our tool out on leather. It also fits our other product lines nicely as well, because remember, we're making stamps for knife makers and blacksmiths. So you could take your leather stamp if you wanted, and you could pound it into steel. Now, the practicality of that, usually they're of a size that you couldn't physically do that, but you could put it under a press and press it into steel. May or may not be important, but stainless steel will eventually wear out, and of course, brass and other things obviously will wear out with time. Not that they don't last a long time.
Yeah.
But we like tool steel. It's a lifetime tool, we call it.
Yep. And for your stamps, now, is there any maintenance that you recommend? Like, can people put it under like a buffing machine with some compound, or do they polish it? Or do they have to like oil it with a brush or something like that? Is there any type of maintenance that you would recommend on a steel stamp?
Actually, a brilliant question. Tool steel can and will rust. Okay, so you do need to take care of your stamp. When you're not using it, keep some kind of oil on it, any kind of oil whatsoever. And then when you go to use it, you pick it up a week later, a month later, whatever it may be, to do your branding. Just pound that into some scrap leather and get the oil out of the image itself, and then you're ready to go. If you're going to put it away for a while, put a little more oil on it. Now, if you ever get rust on it, take a wire brush and WD-40, even right on the image, can't hurt it. It's impossible to hurt your image. Wire brush, get right in there and clean it out.
Gotcha. Because I feel like in the knurling part on the handle, sometimes it gets a little like corroded or gouty, from people's hands. So a wire brush you can clean all that grime out, basically.
Yeah, you can't hurt it.
Good.
Can't hurt it. But that yes, tool steel will rust.
Yeah.
That's one advantage stainless has, but we just want the durability of tool steel.
Yeah. The big question, how do people order a stamp with you? Is there anything that you need information-wise from a customer that helps this process go smoother and not so many barriers are in your way?
Sure. First of all, I want to forgive everyone in advance. Nobody knows how to make a steel stamp, and you shouldn't have to. Why would you?
Yep.
That being said, oftentimes, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. You asked how do we order? You can contact me. The most efficient way for me is to get a hold of me on my website. I've got a form. It tells me what you want roughly, it has a place for you to fill that out. I get your contact information, because if I'm going to send you a stamp, I need that contact information. And it's just a great jumping off point. It's the most efficient point for me. Some people just don't like email. Feel free to call. Love phone calls. We'll do our best to pick up the phone, okay? But yeah, beyond that, so once we've made contact, let's say it's email, I'm going to come back to you. And if I have further questions, great. Otherwise, I'm just going to start letting you know what we can and what we can't do.
And so for the scope of your abilities, when you get information from a customer, can they like draw a stamp on like a napkin and say, hey, Tim, this is what we want? What kind of design limitations do you have working with a customer? Yeah,
great question. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can scratch it out on a piece of paper, snap a picture of it with your iPhone, and email it over. And if it's simple enough, we'll recreate that graphically for you and clean it up. Now, if you have a very sophisticated image that you're shooting for, you may be better off just to work with a local graphic artist and then send it to me. But simple, maker's marks, for sure. We just put all that together for you. You let us know what you want on there. And we try to get a little bit creative as well. You tell us you want that, and I'll say, hey, here's what you asked for, and here's a couple other ways we could look at this, and a couple things to maybe dress it up. Does one of these appeal to you? So we try to give you some options, but for the most part, we can work with what you send us.
Hey y'all, I want to talk to you about the very first sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show, and it is Leather Machine Company. If you are looking to upgrade your workshop or to speed up the process on making items, then look no further than Leather Machine Co. They have various sewing machines of multi-purpose needs, along with leather cutting and splitting machines. Check out their website or give them a call for more information. Now, let's go back to the show. All right, Tim, so are there any weird limitations that you have on a stamp? Anything that hinders the process of making a stamp?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest challenges I have is with really artistic people who are trying to get the Mona Lisa of a maker's mark. Okay? You have to remember, we're trying to put that, most of my stamps are in the 1.5 inch range and under. And so we don't have a lot of room to work with. Okay? So it's pretty common that I get an image that somebody wants at 1 inch that has no chance at anything less than 3 inch, So I guess the point is, keep it simple. Now you can go, it's not that we can't do pretty cool looking designs, because we do. And I would encourage people to go on my website and on the leather picture gallery, and you'll see some really cool, sophisticated designs beyond just a standard maker's mark. But in many cases, not all, those are bigger stamps, a 2 inch or a 2.5 inch, something like that. Now, a really interesting example, everybody in the business knows Don Gonzalez, and I've been blessed to be able to be his stamp provider. He has a beautiful stamp that's, with his signature on there, and people will come to me and say, I want one with my signature on there, just like Don's. But they wanted it 3/4 inch. Well, Don's tool is 2 inches. Okay, so it's just trying to understand the scope of, size versus detail, right?
Mm-hmm. And so can you take a big image and make it small on a stamp, or does that present another challenge in itself? Or because I think you can make it bigger, correct? And it's easier to make a stamp. But is it the font? Is it the boldness? What is it about challenging taking a big image and making it small to a little stamp?
Yeah, it's all of that, Steve. So we made your stamp, right? Mm-hmm. And you were actually ahead of the curve. You sent me a vector file, but of course, how would you know how to design for my process, right?
Yeah.
But because you were able to send me what you had in vector art, it was easier. I always adjust them, but it was easier for me to adjust, right? So we create spacing where it needs spacing. We take boldness off. Most people think bold is beautiful, okay? But on a stamp, when you're trying to get small, boldness is your enemy, okay? You want less boldness so we can keep those letters open, so we can keep spacing between lines. So you saw with your stamp, we created spacing in your name. We took boldness off. We increased the size of Los Angeles on there. So that's pretty typical when somebody sends me their work. And fonts are critical, because the font that you have, and we discussed this, the fonts you have, I love them on your 2 inch stamp. They wouldn't scale down well to a 1 inch stamp. Yep. Okay. Whereas there's other, if I design for somebody who wants a 2 inch and 1 inch stamp, I've got certain go-to fonts that I'll use,
What's the longevity for one of your stamps? Do you know?
For leather, it would be impossible to wear it out. You just couldn't wear it out on leather. Now, when I make these stamps for the same material, for a knife maker or a blacksmith, they do have a life then. But what's amazing is that we make actually, it blows my mind. We make stamps for guys, and like 8 or 10 years later, maybe a guy comes back and says, "Well, I wore that one out. Could we do another?" Or and I'll ask him maybe, "Well, how many stampings did you get out of that?" I was like, "I don't know, 8,000." It's like what? So they even on steel, they have a life, but hard to wear them out.
Yeah. And what's the turnaround time if someone gave you the proper file and just like arbitrary, what is a good turnaround time for you?
Yeah. So we just default to 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Some oftentimes we're running a little bit less than that. So we'll just tell people 2 weeks, and oftentimes we're able to get it out the door in a week or so. It just kind of depends on how work is ebb and flowing.
Yeah. Hey everyone, our second sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is none other than the Leathercrafters Journal. Carrying on a tradition of 68 years of publishing the magazine for leather workers and artists worldwide, they also host 3 trade shows in the United States and 1 in Europe. Give them a call or visit their website and use the promo code COMMUNITY, and you will receive an additional free magazine added to your subscription at no charge. The Leathercrafters Journal truly sets the standard with staying up to date on all things leathercraft. If it's about leather, it's in the journal. Now, back to our show. Okay, Tim, so let's talk about your stamps versus your competitor stamps or other stamps available. What's the difference?
Yeah, great question, Steve. We tend to look at it as a value proposition. Every stamp or every product has a value proposition. Not necessarily good or bad. It's just the value proposition, okay? You can get a 2-piece brass stamp with a screw-on handle. You could get a Delrin stamp, which is a hard plastic stamp. They may work or work well enough for you, and quite honestly, they're less expensive. What we make is not only a lifetime tool, but much more importantly, we make a tool that's easier to use. Because the way this tool is cut, because of the weighting of this tool and how we profile the handles on these bigger tools, just a much easier tool to use, much less chance of getting bounce and double images and mucking up your work when you get to the end of that project and you're putting the final seal of your approval on there. So that's the key difference.
Now, this is going to be a far out question for you, but since you've owned this business, how many stamps do you think you've made or you've helped produce in the shop?
Caught me by surprise there. Oh gosh. Well, you'd probably have to break that up into leather, blacksmithing, and
let's focus on leather stamps.
Oh, okay. Because the other side would be on the tens of thousands.
Okay.
All right. But wow, it might be 30,000. When I was looking at this business, it was funny because we make maker's marks. Like, oh, that's awesome. I kind of like this business. Love what you do. This is a beautiful stamp. I thought, daggone it, you've probably made them all already. Now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then even I became convinced that it's probably sustainable. But even after a year, we're going to run out of maker's marks. But gonna have everybody covered. But and I credit that to the industry. I credit that to leather crafters and people like yourself, and so many people in the industry. Just going out and we're promoting the business. We're bringing new people in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Steve. That's a large part of what you're doing. People are not everybody who does leather is a professional leather maker. You got a lot of, you got engineers. I've made stamps for doctors and lawyers and people just want to go make something, So, and by getting the word out there, having classes available, people seeing this stuff online from Don Gonzalez, Aaron Heiser, yourself, people get excited about it.
Yeah.
So they just keep coming.
And now on the reverse side of how many stamps you made, now let's talk about your stamp graveyard. How many stamps you think you've messed up on? Because I'm sure it's countless.
Yes, well, it has how good it was more in the beginning. Let me put it that way.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
there is a process here.
Yeah.
There's some skill sets that take a while, but how many, that's hard to say, but we throw a few back every week. The every stamp, when I first bought the business, I really wanted to be on the shop floor like 80-90% of the time. Well, really, I'm on the shop floor about 20% of the time, and I'm running the business and handling customers the other time. But there's there's never a stamp that gets out here without me looking at it, without me validating. And after these thousands of stamps, I just still get excited. I come out and I look at that little stamp, like, oh wow, that turned out so cool, and part of what I'm doing also, there's a process of, on the one hand, it's like, okay, I handed it out here. How well did these guys do, right?
Yeah.
But part of that process is how well did I do? Because remember, we talked earlier, I'm in there, I'm making adjustments, and I'm adjusting for our process, right? So, and there's judgment calls. It's not black and white. It's it's one of these things you learn by the seat of your pants, which is a little touchy-feely, right? So I'm looking at that, and I'm like, did I make the right call on that? And I've got it down pretty well, so I don't make too many mistakes. But in the earlier days, I made more mistakes.
Yeah. Hey everyone, our newest sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies. They specialize in manufacturing your leather designs into dies for your clicker machine. They have state-of-the-art equipment that will help you level up your leathercraft products and production with clean-cut leather every single time. Family operated and owned, proudly made in Wisconsin. Contact Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies for all of your leather dye solutions. I love that you have a small team. You guys run a very nice little shop. It's efficient. You want to talk a little bit about your team and how many people you have working here at Steel Stamps?
Yeah, sure. It's my wife and I. My wife works probably half-time, and she comes in and she does all the bookkeeping. She does the shipping, and then a few other things here and there. And so we have 2 employees. As it turns out, there are 2 employees who are legal refugees from Tanzania. And
Wonderful.
They've been working for me for, one's about 6 years and one's about 4 years, I think. Just great people to work with. And I try and treat them really well.
Yeah.
And they seem to appreciate working here. And it's just a good working relationship. They've become very skilled at what they do. They enjoy it. And it's all working well. It took me a while to get there, though. It was very, I went through a lot of people, and anybody who runs a business and depends on people know you have to treat people well.
Yes.
Okay. And I knew that from the beginning, but we went through a lot of people before we finally. It was very frustrating, but it took a while to dial that in.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the little perfections that you do on your stamps that I appreciate from video work. I always look at the finer details of every little thing, and my eyes notice these things, especially on one of those stamps you have sitting right there. What people don't realize is when you grab a stamp, there's no sharp, jagged edges. And even when the mallet hits the top, there's no sharp edges. And then there's laser engraving on the front. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and why you have that there?
Sure. So we'll just talk a little bit about 2 different tool types, and I'll kind of build up to that if I may.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll see, we call this a dimensional tool. This is Steve's name stamp, and I think it's 3/4 by 5/8, 3/4 by 5/8. Okay, and up to 1 inch square or 1 inch by 3/4, we use this dimensional steel. Okay, a beauty of that is that it helps you orient it. So it helps you kind of keep it straight. You know where you're at, right? But at a certain point, you just get too much steel to hang on to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to start machining these things and giving somebody, this is a 2-inch steel piece of stamp,
Yeah.
right? And we saw earlier that we cut these things from a 2-inch bar, right? You don't want to hang on to a big 2-inch piece of.
Correct.
So we have these two different tool types, but back to your question finally. Just so you know which is the bottom, that name always faces you on a dimensional stamp, right?
Yeah. I love it because I've seen some people like they write Sharpies on their stamps, so they know that the Sharpie's always facing you, because then when they whack it and leave the imprint into the leather, they know that it's faced up right. Whereas on your stamps, you already have it lasered in, and it's a no-brainer. You just grab it, and it has to be facing you. That is just those little details. They matter to me, and I love it. And I think that's a phenomenal little process that you did right there.
Cool.
So let me ask, and so that way you can give the viewership, what are good ways for people to contact you and look at your website, order forms, questions, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So we're probably better stamp makers than website people, but I think the website, after a lot of pain and suffering on my end, because it's not my lane really, but I think it's manageable. I think you can go on, you can see, okay, here's leather stamps, here's knife maker stamps, whatever. So you can go into custom tools from the website and then drill down to custom leather tools. Okay. And on that, very important, on that custom leather tool page, we have a downloadable PDF. You can click on it, it'll open up. And if you print that out, it will show the sizes of the basic maker's marks, the oval maker marks, right? And if you print that out, it will print out to size. And that's very helpful for people because you just don't have a good understanding of size. What do I need for this? So you can see it, you can physically see what it looks like. So very helpful. I'd say everybody should be aware of that. Be aware of that PDF, okay? And then on that, I think we mentioned it earlier, but I think the other thing that's very helpful, and especially for somebody who's looking for very detailed things, is if you want to go on the my picture gallery, you'll see, get an idea of what we can do. Just as I said earlier, some of those stamps are in the bigger size range.
Yeah. And best way to contact you, phone number, email. What email address is that?
Okay. Sales at Steel Stamps Inc.
So that's stamps with an S.
That S gets forgotten often.
Yeah.
We got to put that S on the end of stamps. That's steelstampsinc.com.
Yeah.
Sales at steelstampsinc.com. And
if somebody doesn't have access to a computer and just want to call you,
yep.
What's the best office line to call?
Yep. 208-345-2550. I don't typically give my cell phone out, but if somebody wants to text me something, they can call me or email me, and I'll give them a cell phone where they can text an image. So, some people just don't like to email.
Yeah.
So, that's a possibility as well.
Well, Tim, before we wrap this up, I just want to quickly tell the audience that you make these beautiful little stamps of like made in the USA, made in California, made in Texas, made in whatever state it is that these people live in. I love these. I have one, and I think it is a beautiful little stamp to just put on the back of a project where it says made wherever.
Yeah.
And they're at the trade shows. Actually, this is another great question that we need to talk about.
Okay.
You're at the trade shows.
Yes.
And can people order from you and see your quality stamps and test out your stamps at the trade shows?
Yeah, sure. We have a nice display. We put examples of all the different sizes. We try to have them stamped out so you can see the image there, and we bring a few stock stamps as well. Those ones you were speaking of, the made in, or we'll just come up with different designs like the Mason Square or the what's another one?
American flags.
American flags.
Yeah, tons of those.
Yeah. So I add one to the list every now and then. Some guy came in about 6 months ago, and he had this fairy. So I don't know why. It's a fairy. It was really cool. It was this very rough drawing, and I had to spend a lot of time putting that art together. So afterwards, I was like, I'll never make this thing again. And I put all that time in the art. He says, you can have that design. Okay. you can now get a nice looking fairy on my. Don't ask me why. It just is.
It is what it is. All right, Tim. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the Love the Craft Community Podcast Show. I just can't thank you enough for allowing me to come in and seeing your workshop and seeing how you guys make a stamp and what you guys do for this community. It is very, very important. And I think this is an amazing operation you got going on here. So with that being said, I want to thank the audience for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.